Welcome to Sistah's Conversations podcast with your hostess, Letrise Carter. We feature interviews in literary, film, and television, as well as real topics that impact the Black community.
Welcome to Sistah's Conversations with Letrise Carter. This episode is our author spotlight with my special guest, Rebekah L Pierce, a veteran of the armed forces, educator, a prolific writer. Rebekah Pierce is a lover of theater and mystery novels that feature protagonists, fights that personal demons as they save the day. She is the author of two historic fiction novels, Murder on 2nd Street and The Secret Life of Lucy Bosman. In February 2019, Rebekah released I Love Me More, her memoir on the freeing power of self-love. This work was followed by her May release of Bell Blu, her first full-length play publication. Ms. Pierce also bakes cupcakes and cookies too. She is the chief bakeologist at Maggie's Cupcakes, Café, and the host of Richmond's newest cooking show, Beyond the Plate RVA. All right, now, welcome to the show, Rebekah.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, you are so welcome. Glad to have you back on the show. I love it when returning guests come back.
Yes, it's been a minute.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has. So tell us about Bell Blu, and go ahead and give our audience a little summary about that story.
Well, this is actually the other half of my creative juices, so to speak. This is a play that I wrote around the time actually of Murder on 2nd Street when I was here a little bit later. But it's a play about a poor working class Black girl in rural South Virginia. Mm-hmm. And she is living with her mother and her stepfather, who is an alcoholic, and he is an abusive man. And Belle really resents her mother for not owning herself and owning the land, the property that was left to her by her first husband. So Belle aspires to be more than just married with children, which is what her mother believes all women are, made for, basically. And so she, devises a plan with who she thinks is a friend in town, and all hell breaks loose. And so, it's really a look at how sometimes our dreams are bigger than our capabilities. And when we don't really work out the finite details and be patient, it could actually lead to disaster. Mm-hmm. And it does for Belle.
Okay. Now, what would you say is the genre and age group for Bell Blu? Well,
this was a play that was performed. It's been performed a couple times on Off-Broadway in New York and in DC and in North Carolina. So it's adult content.
Okay.
18 and over. There are some heavy topics that I address in the work, which is pivotal to my work overall as a writer. That's, many years ago when we spoke, I shared that I'm what I call a socially conscious writer. So the work is not easy. It's not easy to write. It's not easy to read. And it's definitely not easy to see, because these are fundamental truths that I have come to really question about being a Black woman in America, and where we're at mentally, where we're at culturally and socially, and how we got here. Yeah. Which I argue we got here because our grandmothers and our mothers kept secrets. Mm-hmm. And so part of Bell Blu is about what happens when that secret comes out, mm-hmm. and the crippling effect of this current generation of Black women not being told how to survive. Mm-hmm. Because there is domestic violence in this play. There is marital rape in this play. There is alcohol, and but there's also joy and laughter and rebirth, and freedom. But to get to those things, we have to be open about the ugly things.
Yes.
So this is definitely adult content.
Okay. How did Bell Blu title and the story come about?
Well, I don't know if, well, as you remember, some folks may remember my background is I'm a lit teacher. I teach literature for adults. I teach at the collegiate level, although I started out at the public school, high school level. But I teach literature, and part of the great things about teaching lit is that I get to teach women's lit and African American lit on top of American literature and humanities. But what I noticed in Black literature in particular, and women's literature, is the story of woman when she attempts to step out of what society says is her place, she's punished in literature. And that mirrors, real life, what happens when women try to step out. I mean, we see that in the current political state with, I'm not a big fan of her, but Liz Cheney and, Hillary Clinton and even Michelle Obama and, current First Lady Joe Biden, the strong pull for the patriarchal society to dismiss the voice of women. So Bell Blu is an homage to the woman who wants to be something, but her community is telling her, including her family, that she can't. And it's also an homage to the treatment of women in literature. And I wanted to look at that. But again, more importantly, what I'm looking at as a writer is the secrets. My grandmother, died at 93, and she took a big secret with her to the grave that I didn't find out about until, after the funeral, which is that she, never divorced my grandfather. And so this was the Baptist matriarch. This was, she was a big deal in the Baptist church, and to discover that she never divorced her first husband and was with my grandfather, who was a widow at the time they met, and forged a family. I was curious about why she would not do that. But, my grandmother was born in 1916. Mm-hmm. And when you look at, she was born in Assawoman County, Virginia, which today is Accomack County. And when you look at what the life of Black women was like at the turn of the 20th century, being born to a poor Black family, being Black and Indian, and then traveling to Philadelphia for a better life, and then moving to New York, and, getting married somewhere in between there and having a child, and then something happens and you meet another man and start a new life. So the thing is, the secret that she took with her, what my grandmother didn't tell us, was how do you handle an abusive partner? Mm-hmm. How do you keep your voice intact? My grandmother cleaned houses for white folks. She was a maid, a domestic servant, right? How did you keep your face in all of that? And what were you willing to relinquish to keep that secret? And so just, all the conversations that I had with my grandmother, she never let on. Her answer, as well as, she was my paternal grandmother as well as my maternal grandmother, but my maternal grandmother died when I was 12. So I really didn't get to ask her questions. Right. So I'm looking at all that. I'm looking at that lens. I'm looking at the stories of Black women in literature and in film and in theater. I'm looking at our crucifixion. And I want to know why. And I want to know how we got there. And I want to know how we overcome. Mm-hmm. So that's how it came about Bell Blu.
Okay. And you know what? That is amazing, because there are a lot of secrets. Our ancestors, they took a lot of secrets to their grave. I'm digging up stuff now, and it's like.
And it didn't help. It didn't help us. It didn't protect us like they thought it would. In fact, it hurt us more than anything, because we are repeating these vicious cycles that are crippling our ability to not only thrive, but to overcome. Mm-hmm. So for me, theater is about truth. To me, a person pays to have the truth shoved down their throat when they go see a show. Mm-hmm. You're paying for that truth. And theater is the ultimate truth revealer, because you are forced to sit and confront it and deal with it. And that's what I love about theater. And that's what I love about this play in particular. It is an in-your-face story that I hope people will enjoy reading.
Okay. So I'm gonna have to add this to my reading list.
Go ahead.
All right. So what is your process when you're creating characters like Belle and Daddy Boss and Niecy and Patience? I was going through your synopsis and I'm like, man, these names.
I know. Well, I mean, man, look, when you're an English major, you have to come through Edgar Allan Poe, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Shakespeare. You have to come through these great writers, Richard Wright, Ralph Ellison, Langston Hughes, and particularly in Black literature, characters are named after the characteristic of that character, right? So in the play, we have the main character, Bell Blu, and her name is synonymous with her. She's beautiful. But blue can mean so many things. Yes. Belle means beautiful, but blue can mean so many heavy, but also beautiful things, right? Patience is her best friend who is, quote unquote, happily married with and pregnant with baby number 4. Although the running joke in the play is that she's on baby number 6. But Patience's name is synonymous with her character. She is the very patient, very observant character. And then Niecy is Belle's mother. And that's just an old name in the Black community, Niecy. I mean, it's just a really old name, synonymous with that old, that trope of the Black mother who's very domineering over her children, but is submissive to a fault to her man. Yep. And it's crippling. And then Daddy Boss is, Belle's stepfather, Niecy's second husband, and his name is just synonymous with his character. He is rotten. He's rotten to the core. And he's these are all compilation of characters that we've seen in our circles, right? Seen in our circles. And so, they're brought together, and in each of these characters, you're going to be able to see someone you know. So like Doc, who's, the interest of Belle, he's conjuring up stuff. And then Bird, who's in love with Belle, her childhood friend. Flight, Yeah. So all these names, are reflective of these characters.
Okay.
So I just think about it. Sometimes the names come to me, my muse gives them to me, and other times, it takes a little patience and work.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So do you have a favorite character in Bell Blu?
Well, it would have to be Patience. What doesn't have to be, but it's, Belle is such a complicated character. One of the reasons why I decided to publish the play as a book, was because number one, the work is sitting on my computer and life is too short. The pandemic has taught me that, and I hope I'm not jumping one of your questions, but
you're okay.
I realized with the pandemic that no one's gonna see this story if I don't do something with it. And
right.
We live in a time and day where we have accessible technology that allows us to do things. And so I said, you know what? I haven't seen anyone do it. I love doing it with my students. When I teach world drama or lit, we'll do a play, we'll read it, and then we'll watch it be performed. So I wanted to do that. So Belle, she is a complex character, not only to cast, but to read, because you want so much for her to get her dream, but you want to choke her because she's going about it the wrong way. You're just like, oh my God, if this girl, she's so naive in many ways, but we want her to succeed. But she's got some character flaws. This is your classic tragic hero, so to speak, right? But Patience, I like her. She's naive as well, but in a very different way. Mm-hmm. It's more of Patience is she's aware of the flaws of her friend. She's aware of the flaws of everyone, but Patience chooses which ones to engage with and which ones to leave alone.
Okay.
And you always have to have that kind of character, that counterbalance. Mm-hmm. And she is that counterbalance for every character.
Okay.
In this play. And yet she's still able to maintain her authenticity. She's very clear. Although even though you look at her and go, wow, you really want to be pregnant with that many damn kids?
Yeah, I'm looking at her sideways, like.
Right. But she loves Robert Joe. You could argue she's one of the women that, quote unquote, got lucky. She reminds me of my Aunt Sandy. That's one of the reasons why I love her, because she reminds me of my aunt who met the love of her life at 13, married at 15, and they've been married ever since. They've celebrated 50 years. I mean, that's like rare.
That is.
She had to get permission. They had to get permission from their parents to marry, and their parents gave it to them. And look, you don't see one without the other, and it's 50 plus years later. I mean, it's just it's amazing. So Patience, yeah, she's one of my favorite characters.
Okay. So what is your writing process when you sit down to write a story or a play?
Well, yeah, writing a play is very different from writing a novel. With Murder on 2nd Street and The Secret Life of Lucy Bosman, and even my other, what I call my chick lit novel, which is Sex, Lies, and Shoeboxes. Not with novels, you create the world in your head and you provide as much detail as possible for the reader to see it. Okay. And so because the first two novels, The Secret Life of Lucy Bosman and Murder on 2nd Street, those are historic fiction. That requires a lot of research. So it's a matter of either determining whether the characters will be historical or the setting or this, will be historical. And you build around that. With with Sex, Lies, and Shoeboxes, you just flat out create these characters and the plot. With plays, with theater, you have to keep in mind the theater space. Okay. Because you can't write with a grand scheme in mind, only to discover when you go to try to mount the play that it won't fit in a black box theater or in a proscenium or whatever. So when you're writing plays, you can't give all that detail, because you've got to let the director and the actors find their way through the story. So because the scenes have to be created. Costume designer, set designer, makeup artist, director, lighting, tech, all those people have to work together to create the vision that not only that the playwright sparsely gives in the script, but that the director comes up with for production. So what's written on the page by the playwright, there's going to be a different rendition of that once mounted on the stage, because now it's the director's vision for the work. Hopefully him and the playwright are working together, but a production script can sometimes be very different from the original script. So with my book, I've given you guys my original script, but there are 5 other production versions of this story. So with theater, with playwriting, you really have to keep in mind that you have to have intermission. All plays have a format, an act 1. If you're doing a full length, you usually have 2 to 3 acts. That means at least 5 to 8 scenes per act. You got to give your actors breaks. You got to, make sure you've got actors moving, that the scenes are moving, that the scene is creatable. I mean, and with novels, you can go all over the place with a novel. Yeah. I mean, as long as it is plausible to some extent. But even then you can play with theater. Oh no. You can't have aliens coming out the sky and invading because you can't suspend reality, but so much with theater. So it's a totally different writing process than writing a novel.
Okay. Awesome. So I know we kind of touched a little bit on this earlier when I was reading your summary about the story. You touched base on abuse and alcohol. What made you want to address this in your story?
Well, number one, it is one of the key tropes in Black literature. If you look at the work coming out, particularly in the early 20th century, the novels, alcohol is the thing, and it's the thing that causes violence in marriages, that causes murders. One of the things when I was researching Murder on 2nd Street, the Jackson Ward murders, that novel is set in 1920s Jackson Ward, and when I was reading the newspapers from that era here in town, it was, I kid you not, every front page headline for years was like, such and such killed such and such in front of the bar or the gambling hall. And, when you're reading Zora Neale Hurston, you see in her short stories, you see alcohol and in, her novels. You see that in Richard Wright's work. You see that in some of the poems, County Cullen and Claude McKay. You see it in the Harlem Renaissance writers, although they try to hide it because of their mission, their objective for their work. But when you get to the writers of the modernist period, it's there. And then we have to keep in mind, one of the reasons why you see it also in some literature is because early 20th century, late 19th century, this is the era of prohibition.
Okay.
So, prohibition comes about because what a lot of people don't know is that the women's movement pushed prohibition because they were getting their tails beat, because alcohol was 100% proof. And the women in the church felt like alcohol was changing men and disrupting marriages. And so that the prohibition was pushed by the women's movement in an effort to save women.
Okay.
So it's a theme that runs in a lot of the work. And when we look at historically the impact of slavery on the Black community, one of the things that masters would do on Christmas was to get their slaves drunk, Christmas and New Year's, so that they would feel so bad they wouldn't want to be free. Because they would say to them, this is what you'll have access to if you're free. Do you really want that? Frederick Douglass talks about this in his narrative. And so I'm simply extending the conversation that we've been having in literature since the 19th century about alcohol abuse, which leads to domestic violence, sexual assault, murder, all kinds of vices. Right? This is nothing new. Right. But I'm looking at it in the 20th century with this particular play. And showing, that things haven't changed much. And then on a personal level, unfortunately, alcohol abuse runs heavy in my family. My grandfathers, both of them, were moonshine runners.
Mine was too.
Right?
Grandpa and great grandpa and great grandpa and my great
yes.
uncle. I was like,
wow. I didn't find out about that. When I found out about it, I was like, my grandfathers were moonshine runners. Oh my God, that is so cool. But then I was like, that explains it.
Yeah.
That explains a lot.
That was money for me.
Yeah, it was
joints. My mom talked about the juke joints. And
absolutely.
I met my great uncle, and he literally, I met him a few years before he died. He lived to be like 97, and he was still running moonshine. I was like,
how are you still running?
What is this?
A way for them, though, to control their economics and their life, because again, the effect of slavery, its job was to demoralize and dehumanize and demasculinize Black men. And so when you are shown and presented in public as not being a man, what is there to turn to cover up that pain but alcohol? And so, there are many, many reasons, and they're all connected. So this, in some ways you almost cannot write about Black families without addressing alcoholism,
domestic abuse,
yes,
low self-worth,
drug usage, all of it. And it's across the board, any culture for the most part, but with African American, with the Black community, it runs deep for many reasons. Yes,
it does. So is there an overall message that you like for the readers to take away from this story?
Yes, because even with all of these horrible things that are going on around Belle, she never lets go of that dream. And it becomes infectious. So, her mother doesn't understand her at first, but by the end of the play, Nisi's had that revelatory moment that changes her life. And it changes Belle's life. I'm not going to tell the end, but it's a costly revelation. But what it does is it allows the next generation to understand the power of dreaming and the power of the freedom to dream. That's the huge thing, that we have the freedom to dream, but what does that look like?
Right.
And how do we bring it to fruition? And in a lot of ways, some people have asked me, is this, this play is also revealing the power of grandparents who are having to raise, their grandchildren and their great grandchildren. And that's a huge crux. That's a huge crux. And it's a huge burden, but it's also a big blessing. I mean, there's a big gap there, but to continue the story of freedom, to continue the story of dreaming, and then how to fly from that dream. That's the big core message that I would like for this story to deliver. But again, like I said, and many, I believe Langston Hughes said it, or Baldwin. I mean, you got to go through the ugly to get to the beauty. And sometimes the beauty is not what you thought it would be. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So 2020 was a year we'll never forget. It was.
Yes.
It was a year we'll never forget. What did you learn about yourself during the pandemic that you are doing different in 2021?
I don't know if I'm doing it differently, but I'm doing it with a more sense of urgency, which is I'm not waiting for anyone to create the space to validate me. And I mean, you've been watching me for years. I'm a hustler. That's like in my cells. That's how our people have operated. You've had to find a way to survive in a world that was designed to make sure you didn't.
Yep.
And so, I lost 3 friends and family members in 2020. My students, I had to navigate 100 plus students through that year, trying to keep them focused on their education, on their goals, while they were losing family members, while they were sick, while trying to simultaneously, protect my own family, protect my own health, and grow a business. And just, again, that scripture that tomorrow is not promised to anyone. 2020 was the physical manifestation of that.
It really was.
It absolutely was. So, this is why I published a book, because I'm not going to wait anymore for someone to give me the okay to produce, to create. The trick, though, is to learn how to do that masterfully.
Yes. How
to grow it financially, how to sustain your brand, and protect that brand. Because I'm not here to put just any old thing out. What I put out must have meaning and intention, and it must be strategic. Yes. So those are some of the big things I learned in 2020. Tomorrow is not promised to you. So let's begin the work and produce the work, but produce it intentionally and strategically, but produce the work nonetheless. Sitting at my computer, listen, I mean, somebody said most writers don't become famous until they die. And I'm sitting here looking at all my work going, these children of mine ain't gonna put this stuff. No way for these children. So I might as well put it out on my own, because these children got their own lives to live, their own dreams to fulfill. I would just hope that they would guard it, though.
Yes.
Well, but still, I want them to have their own dreams. This is Mama's work, Mama's dream.
Yep.
I want them to guard it well, but they don't have to live by it.
Right. Just guard it. Keep it in the family.
Right.
Don't let it, it's a legacy,
Exactly.
You leaving your mark.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So what advice do you have for indie authors today? Because we have a lot of indie, we do a flush of indie authors.
The big thing is you got to build a team. Okay, don't put any old thing out there, because once you put it out, I learned this the hard way. Once you put a thing out there, it's out. The ancients believe that writing, when it's public, is forever.
Yep.
So it is important that you build a team and that you guys create a plan for the release of the work. And the first person that needs to be on your team is an editor.
Yes.
A professional editor.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about somebody who's just doing English.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm talking about people who, developmental editing, as well as proofreading, as well as editing for grammar, mechanics, syntax, structure, all those different things. You need to have an editor, a professional editor on your team. You need to also have a professional book cover designer. Don't go down the street and get Nene's cousin who draws well on paper to give you a paint file and then call yourself putting it up as your cover. I get right livid when I see authors wanting to cut corners. Listen, this is how people pick a book. They're attracted by the cover.
Yep.
Attracted by the title.
Yep.
They'll flip that sucker over. They'll read the synopsis. If that synopsis is appealing and well-written, they'll flip that book back over. They'll look at that cover again, look at that title again, open up that book, if not to the first page, to some page in the middle of the book and read it. And if they don't like what they read in the first 10 seconds,
yep,
you're not going to buy that book. So when you put a thing out, it is out. And it is hard to bring it back if you've not done your due diligence with your cover, with your title, with your copyright, with your editing. And again, trust and believe, I've been doing this 20 years. I learned the hard way. You cannot edit your own work.
No, you cannot. No,
you cannot edit your own work. No. So, be mindful of that. And then you gotta have a platform already. You should already be working your brand. You are your brand. An author, there ain't no author that should be out here right now who doesn't have a social media presence. It doesn't matter if you don't like it. You have to have it. So a website and or a Facebook, Instagram page is a necessity because people want to engage with authors. So I think it's becoming more and more difficult to publish a pseudonym. And then the third thing is any authors need to pay attention to the publishing industry. There's a lot of changes occurring. But you must go into it with the right mindset. This belief, when I hear a potential client tell me, when I ask the question, why do you want to publish your book? And they say to make money, I will not work with that client.
Hello.
Because the intention is wrong. You ain't gonna make no money, boo-boo.
Right. I don't know. Yeah, I'm like, what's your intention? You got a message. What's the message?
Yes, we have to focus. Yes, because if you're focusing on the message, the money will come. Because here's the thing. Even a lot of people don't know about the advances. Nobody's giving advances like that anymore. The publishing industry is being eaten up like crazy, and so they don't understand that an advance means you might get that. If you get a $5,000 advance, that means that you won't get your royalties until you've sold $5,000 worth of books.
That's right. They got to make that money back.
You got to make it back. And so if you're going to indie publish, you need to understand, why you're doing it, how to market that book. You should already be marketing yourself, have that presence, and you need to be looking at where the places, the market that your book works, because not everybody wants your story.
That's right.
And that's the second thing that turns me away from a client when I ask them, who's the audience? Oh, everybody. No.
Yep.
No. Everybody don't want your story. No. The third thing I ask is why? What makes your story any different from anybody else's? What are you giving? That is, it sounds harsh, but it's the truth. How many memoirs are out there about having been molested, sexually assaulted, overcoming drug addiction? Here's the thing I teach my writing students. That doesn't mean your story is not important, but what it might mean is it might not be publishable at this time, because you have to always keep in mind, number one, there's an audience for everything, but number two, are you ready to release that publicly? Because there's stuff that comes with releasing things, and there's like almost no preparation in the world for what comes, but you've got to be in a place of healing, if not healed already, before you put that out there. If you're writing about a community that is not your community, you had better have had your beta readers be from that community. You should have had somebody on your team that you could have given the work to review to, so that you can make sure you are not offending, dismissing, or trying to be white savior or whatever else, because you'll get yourself in trouble. I tell my students, your writing is a reflection of you.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful what you put out because it reflects you.
Yep.
No matter the intention. So, you've got to be very, very mindful of that work. It must be clean. It must be well organized and put together. You've got to build that team to make sure that you are putting out the best product in you possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ooh, I say that every day when I'm talking to a client. Like, and I just roll my eyes and I'm like, okay, this is what we're not gonna do today.
Yeah, we're not doing this today. You're not putting up that book cover. Nope. You're not putting my name on that product. Nope. Nope. And it's the same thing with teaching students how to write. How you gonna turn that in? Really? Seriously?
Go back and think about this.
I think you might want to reconsider that. Yeah, because that's the art of writing is dying. I have some gripes about the public school education system, but that's for another show. But
okay,
by the time
and I'm gonna have to hit you up for it too, because I got some gripes.
Girl, by the time they get to me, I tell them I'm the brick wall. I'm the brick wall. You just hit it. You're not coming through here.
So what's next for you as an author?
Well, I'm going to release another one of my full-length plays as a book soon. I wanted to, I have 4 and I'm going to release them all by the end of this year, 2021, 2022. So I'm going to do that. But then I have 2 other stories that are in my brainstorm head and on paper partially. And one is a fantasy novel, a high seas pirate adventure with a female pirate. A lot of people don't know there were female pirates. So here I go back again into historic fiction. And then the other one is, I was inspired by, I don't know if you saw the show High on the Hog.
I see, is it my favorites? So I can watch it.
You got to read it. Well, I bought the book. If it's a film, I'm going to find a book, right? Oh. So I'm gonna find a book. So I got the book, and in the Netflix series and in the book, there's mention of George Washington's chef Hercules. There's very little known about Hercules other than he was considered one of the best chefs of his day. And there are no pictures of him. Oh, wow. They don't necessarily have any of his recipes, but they can attribute some of the culinary cuisine of that era to him. I'm fascinated by that, especially by how he escaped George Washington, who looked for him for years after he managed to run away successfully. So I'm thinking another foray back into, I think I'm going to go into the Revolutionary era. I'm thinking of another historic fiction piece centered kind of around that story of Hercules in some way. Because with The Secret Life of Lucy Bosman, if anyone's read it, you know that she makes confectionaries, which was a high commodity at the time, access to sugar and stuff like that. And so, the story of food is the story of the Black existence in America. Mm-hmm. And so I think I would like to continue that conversation, especially now that I have Maggie's Cupcake Café and I'm more into, the baking world. I think I'd like to, I'm thinking about that. So those are, so the plays, 3 more plays and perhaps 2 more fiction pieces, historic fiction. Yeah, and I might do a cookbook. People are on my behind about doing a cookbook, but girl,
my daughter has been she's just like, Mama, you're gonna have to do a cookbook before you leave this place. I was like, okay.
Right. And mine is a baking book. And I'm just like, for real, don't y'all get enough on my Instagram page? Why I gotta put up another freaking book? But we'll see. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. And I keep telling me, we can't crank this out overnight.
No,
it's a process.
It is a huge process. Because again, you want to do it well. Mm-hmm. So like with Bell Blu, this is not printed like a novel. You can read it. It's readable like a novel, but it is in the play format. Okay. Right. Okay. So it's, you can't put any old thing out there. Everything must be in its proper place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So tell our listeners where to connect with you on social media and your website information.
Look, I've been in this business so long. How could you not find me? No. If you Google my name, Rebekah with a K-A-H, everything pops up, the good, bad, and the ugly. I mean, I'm on social media. I mean, okay, so my company is RLP Productions, right? So rlpproductions.com, and underneath RLP Productions, I have 3 brands. We have the teacher, the writing, the speaking, and the teacher portion. So we have Maggie's Cupcake Café, which you can find on Instagram and Facebook under Maggie's Cupcake Café. And that is a made from scratch, homemade desserts like grandma used to make. And then we have the Pierce Agency, of course, which operates as an editor, proofreader, publisher for people. And then we have Beyond the Plate RVA, which is our RP Productions TV show. That's our cooking show. So Maggie's, again, is Instagram and Facebook. Rebekah L Pierce or Lynn Pierce, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter. And RLP Productions is on Twitter as well as Facebook. So if you just put in those names, RLP Productions or Rebekah Lynn Pierce, you can go to RebekahLynnPierce.com, RLPProductions.com, Beyond the Plate RVA.com, and Maggie's Cupcake Cafe. You can look all those up, as well as the Pierce Agency. You can look those all up online. So we're out there. And again, it's my brand, my one big brand under RLP Productions, and I hope people will check us out.
Okay. All right. I have a bonus question for you.
Sure. Uh-oh.
Okay. So for, and I'll use myself as an example. So this new short story series that I've written, it was actually it was written by accident because I wrote in a completely different genre. Mm-hmm. How would you tell an author who wants to write in different genres, about going about, I guess, growing that audience?
Oh,
I write in romance, romance suspense.
Right.
My first book was romance suspense, but now this came about, after I completed my whole process of these last 2 years of chemo, mm-hmm. and these stories. I mean, I have so many stories in my head. I had to create a storyboard.
Right.
I had to get it out of my head. And so,
exactly.
So I finally wrote the first short story series. And once I was done, I realized I'm like, I'm in a completely different genre.
Right. Well, I'm glad you asked that question. That's a great question, because I'd love to talk to writers about extending your skill set. Mm-hmm. I had a student tell me, I've had several students tell me in the 20 plus years I've been teaching, well, I don't write academic. I'm a freestyle writer. And my response always to that is, well, you're actually not any kind of writer, because a writer will experiment in all the genres. You will learn how to master all the genres. And so for me, the greatest gift a writer can give him or herself is to try their hand in different genres. Mm-hmm. That's why sometimes I think people probably like, I ain't interviewing Rebekah. That girl got books in every kind of genre. Like, which one are we talking about today? But no, I think that's what makes you a strong writer, is to experiment in those different genres. This is why you need to read people who write in that genre, and or have those people who write in that genre in your beta reader group, your private readers group. Learn. You need to study. How do I go from being a romance suspense novelist to historic fiction novelist? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't consider myself a romance novelist at all. But when you look at The Secret Life of Lucy Bosman, which readers have ripped my behind for because I didn't end it the way they wanted me to end it. But when you look at, the storyline between Cy Sanford and Murder on 2nd Street and Lee, mm-hmm. and Miss Johnson, there's love all in that. It's a total romance, a tragic romance, but it's mm-hmm. a romance. But I think great writing will infuse all of the different pieces in it. One of my favorite science fiction writers is Octavia Butler. Mm-hmm. And from Octavia, I wrote a sci-fi inspired play. Right. And this is why when I said I'm thinking about a pirate novel fantasy, that's not my core area, but I love those kinds of stories. Mm-hmm. So why can't I try it? Again, We live in an era, in a day and an age where everything is possible.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, go find the people who are writing in that genre and study their work. Look at how they put together their storyboards or their arcs, or how, what is the common, theme of romance or mine is suspense, historic fiction. And then even with playwriting, you want to write a play, you better go research the format and structure of a full-length play versus a short play, or versus a musical, comedy versus a drama. You gotta learn. Yeah. So, but I encourage y'all to do that. I think that makes you a stronger writer when you can dabble in other genres.
Okay. I think there was God leading my hand, because I kept telling myself I wanted to finish book 2 for my first book, and I could not sit down for the love of God to finish that book. And I guess this story had to come out.
Well, yeah. I ain't finished the second book, Murder on 2nd Street yet. That was 10 years ago, girl.
I don't feel bad. I was feeling bad, People was emailing me and inboxing me, and I was like,
people still email me. I'm like, listen, other stories are pushing their way forward. Y'all gotta wait. I won't tell you.
Yes.
And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I've been reading, and that's the thing, that's the best part this last year. I've been doing a lot of reading, and more and more I read different books. I was like, okay, I gotta write this, this story.
Go for it. I mean, if you look at Langston Hughes, people primarily know Langston Hughes as a poet, but Langston Hughes wrote a play, Mulatto.
Yeah.
Langston Hughes wrote a story. He had short stories. James Baldwin, people think, oh, he's a race guy. Novelist, playwright, essayist, poet.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Richard Wright, our beloved Richard Wright, author of Native Son of Black Boy.
Yes.
His daughter is putting out works that nobody knew he was even working on, and they are crime novels.
Oh, wow.
Right, they're crime novels. I just bought the one he just released about a Black man being accused of killing a white guy, which is perfect for this time. Yeah. And then there's the Father's Law. Yeah, there's the one before that. I believe it's called The Father's Law. A Father's Law. That's a crime fiction novel.
Wow. Would have never guessed it, right?
Oh, Shakespeare was a poet and a playwright. Who told you that you could only write one thing?
Yeah, I got you. Because I was like, I'm just gonna write, because I said I want to write in every genre. I was like, right. I want to be well-rounded.
Yeah, and the thing is, okay, so how do you get your audience to come up with you? Don't even attempt it. Okay. Go for the new audience.
Okay.
Because if people really like your work, they'll follow you no matter what genre you're writing in. Okay. But there's nothing wrong with catering to a new audience. I mean, I'm in all kinds of books on Facebook. I'm in the theater group. I'm in the fiction group. I'm in the nonfiction group. Black critical theory studies group. I mean, I'm in all these different groups because I write in those worlds. I can pen an academic formal essay, dissertation, as well as a short play, full-length play, as well as a poem, as well as a novel. So it's just find your tribe.
Okay.
And write to that tribe. Okay. And when they start following you, they'll see that you're diversified. And that's the thing you want. I believe in is your brand needs to be diversified without killing you. Without overtaking your creative inspiration.
Absolutely. I'm learning to, step back, take your time, don't rush it.
Yes. Right.
Because I've seen some stories. I'm like, you put that out in 30 days?
Exactly. They put it out in 30 days, but they probably started writing it, good ones really started writing it months, if not years ago. But it depends on the intention, the motivation, the complexity of the story. Is it just a jump off because really the more extended version is coming later? Is it just something to get the audience interested? I mean, there's all kinds of ways that a work can come out. But again, I mean, I just go back to intention and strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I bought a book that I won't name. It don't have no page numbers. I want to send it back.
See,
it don't have no page numbers.
No.
I was like,
who formatted this book?
I was like,
oh, you don't have no page numbers.
I was like, really? I like the title, right?
Right,
but but when I got it and I flipped it open, I was like, ooh, child.
See, that's what I mean by you can't get it back. I mean, I remember when I first put out a book, I had to send emails apologizing to readers because I made a mistake. And that endeared some to me. And then others just, didn't like the work. So one of the things I've learned is that, any review in some ways is a good review because at least you did your job, you got them to say something. Mm-hmm. But when they don't want to read, when they comment that your stuff was poorly organized or formatted, that hurts. Yeah. because that stuff is fixable.
Yeah.
Not liking the way I ended The Secret Life of Lucy Bosman by not giving her the man, not liking it because of that is totally different from you didn't have any page numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or chapter headings.
Yeah. It was just I was like, I couldn't even read it.
They went and did they did a Hemingway. They did a stream of consciousness, right? Listen, Edgar Allan Poe even put in some page breaks.
And you know what? The funny thing is with these reviews, I had a reviewer, she didn't finish my first book because she was like, she said it was too intense. And then she wrote a review and I was like,
why you write the review if you didn't finish it?
You didn't finish this book.
I
don't like Amazon for that.
I don't either. I'm like, really, can we just like, if you didn't like it, why are you, just don't, come on now.
She said it was too intense. And I was like, okay. And I just chopped it up that it wasn't for her.
Well, I had somebody from Murder on 2nd Street give it a 1 or a 2 because they swore that the entire book was typographical errors. What they didn't understand was Black vernacular. That this is how Black folks spoke at the turn of the 20th century. I was like, you got to be kidding me. What? But
oh my goodness. Yeah. But you know what? This particular reviewer, I went back and looked at how she's an Amazon reviewer. I went back and looked at how she reviewed all Black people's books, and she reviewed us the same way. She gave 4 grades to every Black book she's ever read.
Wow.
And she has
including Maya Angelou.
She has over 500 books that she has read.
Wow.
And it shows. And I was just scrolling through the Black books, and she, she's dinging people for their cover. She's like horrible story, horrible.
Oh plot. My God. And I was so your job is to be her job is to be spiteful. Yeah. That's right. There's a certain place in hell for people like that. If you gave a poor book review, go to line 2.
Yeah. Because she even reviewed
Racism line 3
on the day it released. I said, there's no way in the world you read that book in one day.
No, that's selective racism.
Yeah.
Ooh, I think I just invented a new word.
Selective
racism. Let me trademark that.
You better. Oh wow. I enjoy talking to you. I definitely got to bring you back on the show. We do a real talk the first Thursday of every month.
Okay.
We're coming back in August because I'm going on vacation.
Oh, so am I, girl. So I need one. Lord Jesus.
So first, I need to bring you back so we can talk about the schools.
Oh, I'm gonna need some wine on that conversation.
Educating our children. The system.
Whole other conversation.
Yes, because what I went through with my daughter in school, I had to fight. And
all my life I had to fight
Harpo.
You told Harpo to beat
me. Yes. I'm definitely gonna hit you up to bring you back on our special Real Talk Thursday, so we can have some real conversations with women, and we can get nice and deep.
Well, I'm here for it. Let me know because I can go there.
Okay.
Go there.
Everybody, you guys, make sure you pick up Bell Blu. And if you got time, you go and pick up Murder on 2nd Street and Secret Life of Lucy Bosman. Pick her books up, follow her on social media. We love you, Rebekah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome. You're so welcome. Have a great evening.
You too.
Thanks to our special guests for joining the show today. Be sure to follow us on your favorite streaming channel so you don't miss a show. We can be heard on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and YouTube at Sistah's Place. Visit our website, www.sistahsplace.com, to learn more about us.